Aunt Knack Knack.
Who's there?
Blank face.
Blank face who?
Blank face reviewer. I'm gonna subscribe from your channel and kill your whole family.
Oh, okay. Hi everyone. Breastany Feed Tano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of the new ScHoolboy Q record, Blankface. This is the latest project from Black Hippies from Top Dog Entertainment's grimiest MC, Mr. ScHoolboy Q. Following up his commercial breakout album, Oxymoron, which dropped a few years ago. I myself enjoyed this record quite a bit. Actually, I enjoyed it a little more at the end of the year than I did around the release date it was originally dropped. There were some pretty good hits off of this thing, like Collard Greens, Studio, smooth kind of slow jam for Q, though I did think it was kind of underwhelming. But what was impressive about this record is that it had some of Q's most ambitious tracks yet, which were intensely personal songs like Hoover Street, as well as the title track. And then beyond that, you had all these mean, eccentric bangers with colorful, progressive production, really expressive and raspy lead vocals from Q, songs like Los Awesome and Gangster. And another thing that's good about this record is that it's a pretty tight album. It's not loaded with filler tracks, it's not loaded with skits or just songs that didn't really need to be there or were just redundant. So going into this new record over here, I had no reason not to expect the same thing, especially given how concise and catchy some of the lead singles and tracks from this thing have been, like Tookie Knows Part 2, as well as Groovy Tony, even the song That Part, which I found a little underwhelming. While it is a little more low-key than I would like for a single, and I'm not really sure why anybody gives Kanye West a pass on this verse. I mean, yeah, he has lots of energy on here, but the okay, I mean, it sounds like a line Cal would write. So going into this album, I was expecting, honestly, some kind of narrative or theme or concept or something that pulled the whole album together, especially given that progressive and ambitious hip-hop albums is what Top Dog Entertainment is known for. And unfortunately, none of that happens here. We're actually not even close to a concept being a thing on this project. If there is one, it's just so vague and minuscule and faint that it doesn't really impact the overall experience of the record. The closest thing we have to a theme on this project are the mentions of gang life and drug dealing that you may already remember from Q's past records, but they're a little less detailed here. Like, they're not rooted in the personal experiences that he was really going into great detail about on his previous record. I mean, I get that he is clearly rapping from the standpoint of a handful of characters that he's come up with in his own head, but the thing is that the world that these characters live in seem to be so much less vibrant and interesting than when ScHoolboy Q is just rapping about something from personal experience. And there are also at least a handful of tracks on this thing that don't really seem like they work into what little chunks of narrative are sort of thrown to the listener on this project. Not only that, but Blankface is not really the pointed and direct and focused album Oxymoron was either. There are 17 tracks on this thing, it's over an hour, and a lot of these songs are total duds, in my opinion. Like the unnecessarily long and kind of uneventful intro track, Torch, that kicks this whole thing off. Just way too much time given to this thing, considering how low-key it is. If it wasn't for the passionate and the fiery crescendo chorus, I guess you can call it a chorus, the song is kind of loosely structured, from Anderson .Paak, the track would be totally boring. But this track is indicative of a lot of cuts on this record. You know, there are some cool vocal manipulations on this song, and the instrumental and the vocals generally come together into kind of a psychedelic experience. There's certainly a character to this record that stands out to me, but a lot of the lyrics and the songwriting just are totally forgettable. Like on the very chilly and low-key song By Any Means Necessary, which features some vocals from Kendrick Lamar and the trademark sort of deeply pitched ba-ba-ba vocals that popped up all over his last record too. This track just kind of sounds like a To Pimp a Butterfly leftover as a result. Then there's the total snoozer Know You Wrong, which features, I don't know, these very loose piano loops and ScHoolboy Q in this really aimless way, sort of rapping, sort of singing. The track is disappointingly lethargic and really sloppy too. He sounds like a, I don't know, ODB on Dramamine. But the worst track on the record has to be Big Body. Big Body, Big Bands, Big Body, Big Bands. Horrible chorus on this thing. Can't imagine they spent much time on these lyrics. And then the instrumental features this ridiculous blurty horns and ding 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 pieces of percussion and some hand claps that just go on and on and on. They cycle incessantly. This instrumental and many others, sometimes even on tracks that I like, don't really progress as much as I would like them to, especially as they're switching from a verse to a chorus. Now, the album isn't all bad. There are actually lots of highlights among the 17 tracks here. I love the song Dope Dealer, which is incredibly funny, eccentric, and features these hashtag ad-libs on his verse, Trash Can. The song John Muir has one of the catchiest flows on the entire record. Funky soul samples, awesome horns sort of flare up on the hook, some beautifully smooth chorus vocals as well. The instrumental is beautiful, and it pairs nicely with ScHoolboy Q's Junkyard Dog rasp, a good contrast.
I should also mention that the now extended version of Groovy Tony now has a verse from Jadakiss, really good addition to that track, and I like the little vocal break that happens at one point in the song too. Some of the tracks on this record actually surprised me with a fantastic amount of detail.
There are a lot of elements to some of these beats, though not always do they add to the quality of the song, like on the obnoxious singing vocals on the song Straight Ballin' Like a Bitch, Picture Me Rollin'. Meanwhile, other cuts like Black Thoughts, which to me are very poetic and more thoughtful lyrically, feel really loose, kind of like a potpourri of sounds that don't really make sense together. From the very loose piano samples to the kind of flat, lifeless drum beat hanging in the background and Q's flow, bordering on spoken word. And right after this track, we have the very melodic and passionate title track, which is mostly dominated by Anderson .Paak, a good performance from him. But again, with the lack of organization generally on this record, this song kind of feels like an interlude or kind of a transitional moment that isn't really complementing anything. I feel like this album could have been sequenced in any number of ways and you would have ended up with roughly the same experience. I think this song had great potential to be a closer or something, but instead the album continues on for another couple of tracks because the album delivers to us next a really vocally unimpressive performance from Miguel and a terrible hook on this track as well. I mean, while I didn't really care for the song Studio, at least that track was kind of pretty and smooth and had enough sense to give you the verse and give you the chorus in a measured manner. This song just does not know when to stop. And that's kind of this album in general. Q did not kill his babies. I feel like there are a lot of songs on here, a lot of ideas on here that should have made it onto the cutting room floor. Because throughout this album, I think there are a lot of unsuccessful experiments, tracks that were not fully groomed to the point where they felt developed instrumentally. Lyrically, sometimes this thing isn't as focused or doesn't go into as much detail or the level of detail I have expected and enjoyed from Q in the past. And overall, the experience of the record, in my opinion, is kind of tiring. Q and his collaborators, his producers on here, just did not know when to pull the reins in, and as a result here, we have a pretty sloppy project. I think among the 17 tracks here, there's probably a decent album, but the fat and the redundant moments and the unnecessary moments were just not cut.
Along with all these zany cuts too that I don't think were doing the album any favors. It's almost as if ScHoolboy Q wanted to have all these vocal moments that were as off the wall and as playful as a lot of the very theatrical and almost schizophrenic voices on Kendrick Lamar's To Pimp a Butterfly. But here they're just so much more unfulfilling because there's not a whole lot of substance to this record.
I'm feeling a decent strong 5 on this thing. Tran.
Zishin, have you given this record a listen? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? You're the best. You're the best. What should I do next? Hit the like if you like, but you probably don't because you hate the fact that I don't like this album more than you. I'm sorry. Don't cry. It's gonna be okay. We're all gonna get through it. Anthony Fantano, ScHoolboy Q, blank face forever.